Two-step equations. The objective of this video is to solve equations using SAD-MEG. So first, we want to recall lesson 3. We want to simplify the expressions, so that means we do the operation in the problems using order of operations. So order of operations tells me I have to multiply or divide before I can add or subtract. So I have to do 4 times 2 first, which is 8, and then I can add 4. So this will give me 12. If I just read from left to right, I would do 4 plus 4, which is 8, and multiply by 2, which is 16. Completely different answer. We also need to recall lesson 6, which shows us how to solve a one-step equation. So we know we must identify our variable and then get rid of that number that's on the variable side by doing its opposite. So if it's minus 5, which is the same thing as negative 5, you do plus 5. And you have to do the same thing on both sides. So when you simplify, you are left with 6 equal to r. So now using SAD-MEG, we basically just want to follow the guidelines that we're going to isolate the variable group, which means that we are usually going to add or subtract first, which is basically the last thing we would have done in order of operations, but now it's the first thing, hence the S and the A coming in. So what is the variable group? Well, X is the variable, so 4X is the variable group. So I am going to isolate this first by getting rid of the 9. So I'm going to do minus 9 on both sides. So now we are left with negative 4x. This becomes 0. 13 minus 9 is equal to 4. Now we want to isolate the variable by undoing multiplication or division. There is a D and the M in SAD-MEG. So I'm going to isolate X by getting rid of the negative 4. So I'm going to divide by negative 4 because remember we want to do opposite, and that negative 4x means negative 4 times x, so the opposite would be to divide. So now when we simplify, x is equal to negative 1. If I wanted to check my work, I would replace the letter x with the number I got and see if it equals 13. In this case, I need to do order of operations, so GEMDAS, multiply first. 4 plus 9 equals 13. This is a true step statement. It checks out. So again, isolate variable group. So that means I gotta get rid of negative 1 by undoing with addition or subtraction. Negative 1, so plus 1. I am left with 10b equals negative 40 because that negative 1 plus 1 gave me 0. Now I'm going to isolate the variable. Because it is being multiplied, the inverse would be to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides. So b is equal to negative 4. Now these look a little more advanced because there is a big fractions. So remember I said SAD-MEG. G represents grouping. Well, everything inside a fraction is grouped together. So this negative 2 plus b is a giant grouping symbol. So that means it has to go last because it's the last letter inside MEG. So that means that the 16 has to go away first. Because it is being divided, because it's on the bottom of a fraction, the opposite would be to multiply. So I am going to isolate the variable group in this case by using by undoing division, so using multiplication. So now this leaves me with negative 2 plus b, because this cancels into just being the number 1. And negative 1 times 16 is negative 16. Now I have a nice one-step equation where I can isolate the variable. So I'm going to isolate this variable by getting rid of the negative 2. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So this gives me 0. And I am left with b equal to negative 14. Now, the second problem is a little different than the one we just did, because instead of having one giant fraction, I have one mini fraction. So I am going to isolate the variable group in this case by undoing addition. So I'm going to get rid of this negative 4 of this positive 4 by subtracting 4. So 9 minus 4 is 5. P over 2 stays because I didn't do anything with that. And this became 0. So now I can isolate the variable by undoing multiplication. So I'm going to undoing division, so I will multiply. So 2 times 5 is 10, leaving me with P. Now you try and solve these two problems. Pause your video, see if you can figure it out, and then press play to see if your answer is correct. Pause your video now. So isolate my variable group. So I will add 3 on both sides. So P over 2 is equal to negative 9. Then we want to isolate variable, so we'll multiply by 2. So B is equal to negative 18. Isolate variable group. Do the opposite, so positive 5 minus 5, this gives me 0. That's how I make it go away. So when I simplify, I'm going to have 9x equal to negative 180. Then I want to isolate variable. Because it's being multiplied, the opposite would be to divide. This becomes a big 1. So x is equal to negative 20.